Hi, everybody. I am Suzanne Corson. I am the executive director of the ANJC, and I am thrilled to start our new series, ANJ Sitdowns, where we have guests that come on just to chat about New Jersey, chiropractic, their involvement with the ANJC. And I'm super thrilled for our inaugural episode to welcome Dr. Michael Spadafino, the first board president of the ANJC. Been in practice. He was in practice for decades. He's going to tell you all about it here in New Jersey. And thank you so much for agreeing to be our first guest on ANJC Sit-Downs.
Well, Suzanne, I'm very honored that you chose me to be number one. I have a little bit of history, and I've
I know
got
you
some
do.
things to say.
I know you do. That's why I knew. First one I knew how it has to be. Let's start off. I shared you were in practice many years. You are retired now. But how many years did you practice?
I was actually in practice for 34 years.
Wow.
Chiropractic was actually my second vocation. I was a high school science teacher for 10 years and then left to become a chiropractor.
And what made you do? I didn't know that about you. All these hours we spent together. What made you make that change? What drew you to chiropractic?
It was very convoluted, but what drew me was that it came to a point where I had decided to make a change in my life, and I went out to the counselor's office, and they had a new computer program of on a Commodore
Oh my
that
gosh.
said choose vocations, and so I filled out like 100 question questionnaire, and I said, give me 10 vocations. And of course, teacher was on it and a few other things, a pharmacist, doctor, and said that I like doing physical things. And one of them was chiropractor. And so I had a few friends, and one of them was a friend from my early youth, Tom D'Elia.
Hmm.
And I went to Tom's office and got my first adjustment and got checked, and he discussed with me. And I said, Tom, tell me about chiropractic. What is it? I know about, you adjusting me, but what's it about? And he explained to me that what you're doing is, instead of looking at the body for sickness, you're looking for ways to encourage health in a person's body by correcting subluxation and adjusting their spine to allow for normal nerve flow and normal natural rehabilitation. And he told me that it was a health field that does not do drugs or surgery. And I said, okay, so my goal is to make people healthy without using drugs or surgery. And to me, it was like, sign me up. I
Yeah.
mean, because as a science teacher, that made such a logical connection that it made me feel compelled to follow that up instead of going down a medical route, which was one of my choices,
Yeah.
and become either a medical doctor or an osteopath. And I said, no, I'd rather help people be healthy, and keep out of the operating room rather than being there to operate on them.
I didn't know that this was your second career, but like that, what was it like going back to not going back to, but going to chiropractic school, um, after you'd already been a teacher? I'm sure, did you already have children and married and all that too?
Yeah, it's really quite interesting that uh, when I made the decision, and my wife and I agreed that I was going to leave being teacher and go to chiropractic school, a month after that, she told me she was pregnant
Oh,
with our third child. So I already had two children and a family. And, God bless my wife. I mean, she backed me all the way because she also talked to Tom D'Elia. And when she understood what it was about, she said, yeah, go ahead and do it. And so we packed up our family, went out to Davenport, Iowa, and went to Palmer College. And I was the old man in the crowd. I mean, I was already 35 years old.
Yeah.
Start college over again with a bunch of 22 to 24-year-olds and a family.
I mean, I think of like when I was in college and I, just an undergrad, but I think of how I would have appreciated it more if I had gone and I was a little older and could like understand. Do you feel like it was that way? Like you just understood the importance of it. You'd already been like in a career and understood like what life was going to be like and how to build it. Like maybe I'm projecting that, but is that how like sort of you felt?
Oh yes, there's uh, the way I kind of put it was, as being a teacher, I was very happy as being a teacher, but I thought I needed to make a change. And when people asked me, I said, when I thought about it, I said, at the end of my life, what would I be more proud of?
Oh,
That I stayed a teacher and was a good teacher, good coach, or that I reached for that golden ring to be something more and be uh, more conclusive in what I had to offer humanity. So that's the way
oh,
I looked at it.
wow. Well, that I'm sure was not easy. And you didn't take the easy route. Not that I think that there's an easy route, whatever our careers, but you certainly did not take the easy route, but must have been so meaningful. Once you started your practice, like how did you grow it throughout the years? Like, and
Well, I guess really was conclusive that it would, kind of, my wife pushed me in a direction. Uh, I wanted to move to a beautiful small town in Colorado to begin a practice. And to be frank, my wife just said, "I want to go home." And so we went back to actually where I taught at the high school, and was able to open a practice right in my hometown, which
yeah,
was a great advantage because um, having been a teacher and a coach, and
you
my
knew
wife
everybody. Yeah.
also, uh, we had name recognition pretty quick, which was a great advantage. And so the practice was able to grow and thrive, pretty quickly, actually. And and again, things were different. I actually hooked up with an old class, one of the people that was a student of mine who was a chiropractor in town, was an associate, left his associateship, and we opened up and shared office space for 9 years. My friend, Blaze Toto,
Yeah.
and and then he went off on his own, and I went off on my own, and stayed in the location, and until I retired, when I sold my practice to Jim Campbell. And so I went from sharing office space to being a solo practitioner, and ended up going out as an associate rather than coming in as an associate.
That must have been, I mean, just to have that sort of, you made choices. Not everybody is lucky to be able to make those choices, as
Yes.
they are in their career and whatever, but even and a small business owner too, but
Yes.
still to be able to make those choices, a true testament. I mean, one of the things that I just happen to know about you since we spent some time together is you're super involved in the community and in just lots of different ways. Politically, obviously with the ANJC, you mentioned that you're a coach. Like, why is getting involved and giving back been so important to you personally and professionally?
Well, the you can approach it from either of two ways. You can do it in a self-aggrandizing concept of, well, I'm going out and doing these things to try to make my practice grow. And I think that is the wrong concept. What you need to do is believe that not only where you practice, but also where you live, if you are part of the community, you should do everything you can that makes that community the best community that it can be. And so I was fortunate that, even having been a coach, that, right from the beginning, I was on the sideline with the coaching staff, got to know the trainer well. And I was like a second trainer when I was there. When there was an injury, I was right there, and my opinion counted.
Yeah.
And so there was my involvement there, and anything that was going on sports wise in town, uh, not only at the high school, at some of the lower levels, I got very involved in those things. And when my kids got older and started playing soccer and stuff, I was the person that they went to when there was an injury and said, "What do you think we're going to do with this kid?" You
Yeah.
know, and so because I had a sports background, I was able to do that. But also because I was a business owner, I became very heavily involved in the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Uh, at the church, I became involved with the Knights of Columbus uh, because of the great things they do. I joined the Lions Club. And the thing about it is, in a lot of those things that people say, "Oh, I don't have time," you do have time.
Right.
You really do. You find that in many cases, it doesn't take as much time as you think. And, uh, and in a lot of those situations, people are very reluctant to take a position of authority of running
Mhm.
it, and I've just never felt that way. If they said we need a president, I'm like, all right, be a president.
So, well, that leads me into my next question because you were the first president of the ANJC board and a founding member of our organization. Um, I would love to know how that happened, if you could share how that happened, and then, what accomplishments that you're most proud of, during your tenure as on the board and just really throughout the last 20 years of the organization.
Well, I'd like to actually go back to the previous
Yeah,
question
if you
first
don't mind. Yes, please go.
because, like I said about getting involved, uh, I knew how important both personally and also dealing with being a member of the community
Yeah.
that I became involved politically because I felt, first of all, that as a member of the community, I wanted to know how my town was being run and what I could do to make it better. And so I got on committees and such. I was on the health advisory board and got on some committees. And and then I also got involved because I knew that was a conduit for me to be able to talk to legislators, not
Mm,
only locally, but on the larger scale. And because they knew my name and who I was, when an issue had something to do with chiropractic, I didn't just talk to an aide. I
right.
got to talk to the senator or the assembly person directly because they knew me and they would listen to me and was able to curry favor with them on legislative issues. And so I felt that that was very important. And I'm saying that to encourage others to step up and not be afraid because all these legislators are just people. And when they know about
Hmm.
what chiropractic is and what we do, it makes a difference.
I often say, and you and I have had this conversation, they're elected officials there to serve on the behalf of their constituents. So, politics are local. If you know something, like it's so true. That relationship building, when you need something, that's what they're there for. Don't be afraid. Reach out. You should know who your district legislators are, your state assembly and your state senator, and ask them for stuff and let them know what help you need. Also, when things went well, like thank you for doing that. That's important too. Like they want to know like that they put hard work into it, and I think that's important. Which
Yes.
I know that you have seen like this is it's a lot of time and effort that goes into pushing issues through to addressing them to getting to understand it. Right? I mean,
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to understand that uh, the wheels in legislation turn very,
slow.
very, very slowly. I mean, you can have an issue that is important to you and you think it needs immediate
Mhm.
action, and it can take 5 years. It can take 10 years
Yeah.
to get it over the goal line, but you got to be persistent. And that's why it's important to have a lobbyist. People, might be critical and say, well, what has he accomplished? What's he got doing? You got to understand that he's got to go back to these people legislative session after legislative session and say, this is still our issues.
Hmm.
How can we get this done? And John Bomdieri is a great lobbyist. He's well respected because
Yes.
I talk to people in legislation and I mention his name and they all say, yeah, I know he represents the chiropractors, right? And I'm like, that's right. And so, he's
He's a
got
good
a
guy to
hard
have on
job.
your team.
Yes, and it's a hard job. It
Yeah.
really is. But we have to have a voice that comes from not just he's speaking, but I don't know how many times uh, when I was like president or on the board, where John might even call me up and say, Mike, I'm going to see the senator is having a thing. Will you come with me? And
Mhm.
because I knew my senator, I would go and be able to hold their ear for a while at a gathering. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
It is really
And
important.
I encourage the doctors to, step up, get out there. And the only way we get things done is to get involved.
And I'll use this as a little plug for any of our members. And you and I have had this conversation and with each other and with others. Um, if you do know, even if you don't know, but you have something to say, come to us and let us know. Like, hey, I would like to go if you're going to see so and so. I live in District 11. If you're going to see Senator Gopal, like I'm happy to come. I'm happy to support that. On behalf of the ANJC, it really isn't politics or local. It is important that we have and lots of different faces and that they see us as a whole one team and group that are like moving in unison. And that is how it might take a long time, but we're going to get it done. First board president, how did that happen? And what are some of the different things that you helped to make happen as board member, as board president, and just really over the past like 20 years?
It's and sometimes it's hard to toot your own horn, but
Please, that's what we're here. You're not. I'm asking you to.
uh, before we had the move, there was actually seven organizations in the state of New Jersey, three of them statewide, four of them local, and all working independently. And so they actually were able to get together and form a loose group that would actually speak to each other called the Forum. And it worked well because we were communicating with each other, but we had no substance.
Hmm.
We were not working together. We were working independently. Honestly, I stepped up before the forum and I said, I'm going to start a unification process. And I went around and one of my good friends, Frank Zacharia from up in Rutherford, I believe he is, went and did a survey at one of these forum gatherings, and which had from the most conservative to the most liberal thinking chiropractors. And what it came down to is 88% agreed, on what our concept of what we do as chiropractors. And so it made it obvious that there was more that bound us together than
Mhm.
separated us. And it was more of a fact of it wasn't chiropractic philosophy that was keeping us apart. It was philosophy of practice. One group would say, I don't like that you do these things. And the other group would say, well, I don't like that you do these things.
Yeah.
And once we came to realize that, but what we are trying to do as chiropractors, it's all the same.
Mhm.
It's just the way we go about it that was the point of argument. And I'm glad that I was instrumental in getting the groups to sit down and agree. And so eventually, when they sat down and said, yeah, we agreed to sit down and talk about unification, I brought in a broker named Gene Vino from Pennsylvania, and he only had to get two groups together, and he was willing to come and be the broker for helping us make a deal so that we could all unify under one banner. And once we agreed to that, then came the hard work of hammering all of that out. And finally, actually 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually put pen to paper and said we all agree to do this, and became ANJC.
What do you see like the future of chiropractic care, like in New Jersey and throughout the country, knowing what you had to do those 20 years ago?
Well, the thing that is important is that 20 years ago we formed, and we hired Sig Miller to be our first executive director, he was a chiropractor and knew history and knew how we can get along and how we cannot get along
Mhm.
sometimes. And it made a big difference because having an executive director to take the load off of decision making on various things fell away from the chiropractors and was on somebody else's shoulders, which are your shoulders now.
Mhm.
And getting together and deciding that we would have one lobbyist, that we would have one attorney group to represent us and represent us well. And it has worked out to be in our favor because only 5 years in, we were able to pass legislation to change a 50-year-old, very archaic, very restrictive scope of practice and be able to expand it so that the conservative chiropractor who says, I just want to correct subluxation and not be bound by having to have symptomatology as part of that diagnosis of subluxation was allowed to do that. And so that was very important because we protected every chiropractor's right
Yeah.
to practice the way he saw fit, including being able to say, my job is to correct subluxation regardless of symptoms. Whereas all the insurance companies would be like, well, what's the symptoms? And so that was very important. The other thing that was very important is that we got the right to do extremity adjusting
Yeah.
and be able to be reimbursed because it was part of our scope, where they kept on trying to stop us or disallow us from doing that. And the third thing was that the new scope allowed us to make nutritional recommendations for supplements and monitoring people's health uh, using supplements and being able to actually sell them. All those things were not in the original scope. And so being able to get that done was
Huge.
probably the biggest change that could have happened that helped. As some of my friends say, that if it wasn't for the scope change, that they figured that they probably wouldn't be practicing in New Jersey anymore. But they're here.
But they're here and we're grateful for it.
Yeah, yeah, I am too. The way I see it is that for chiropractors now and moving forward, uh, I think that working in the realm of insurance reimbursement, uh, you will be able to get by. I mean, you stay within the parameters, but it means you're going to have to work hard and you're going to have to put up with a lot of frustration. But chiropractors have a tendency to be able to survive. The ones that thrive, that I know personally, are the ones that think outside the box.
Mhm.
They integrate, they add things that are within the scope of practice for them to be able to increase their revenues. You can do that and still be true to your philosophy of
Mhm.
chiropractic by working, on selling supplements, by um, working on extremity adjusting and sports injuries and such, and specializing so that you can be uh, more lucrative in the marketplace. And I have seen some of the best practices that the biggest thing they do to make them greatly successful is they really focus on educating their patients so that when they come in with pain, they are made aware that they are not pain doctors and that I am here for, goes back to the philosophy. I
Yeah.
am here for your health. And this is why it's not 12 visits and you're out the door. Even if the insurance company says it's 12 visits and you're out the door, you have to make them understand the value of having their spine correctly aligned, that their bodies are a temple and that they should do things to help themselves be healthy, and that you don't mind being a coach on that,
Right.
and that this is a long-term gig, not a 1 month treatment. They can go to physical therapists for that, and that you're there for them for the long run. I mean, if you make people understand that, they will be willing to pay cash when the insurance company says no more, if you make them understand that. And I think the doctors that I see that thrive do that. They make sure that they continually educate their patients about the value of chiropractic care and good health. That's it.
Well, I wonder if that would be my, as we sort of wind this down, I wanted to ask, what the best advice you would give someone considering a career in chiropractic.
I would be honest with them. I would say, this is not, and even for medical doctors, it's not a you put hang your shingle up and it's a success story.
Right.
You have to be able to think outside the box. You have to be proactive. You have to be wise in how you deal with how you set your practice up, but you also have to know what you want to get out of it. Do you want to be a pain doctor? That's fine. You can work with the insurance companies and be a pain doctor, but you're in danger when you do that of being marginalized, because more and more physical therapists are out there trying to sell the same product, and they got the backing of the medical societies. Whereas you're going to have to struggle to make sure that people will come in if you're going down that avenue. But if you go down the other avenue of being focused on health, focused on chiropractic being unique and different than PT or better than medicine, that you will have a greater probability of success. And it goes back to the circle of all those things that we talked about: getting involved in your town, getting involved in your passions, and following through with them. And don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Because if you're going to be a success in chiropractic in the modern era, that's what you got to do. You got to be involved, and you got to step out of your comfort zone, and you have to be really well organized in how your practice is run.
That's great advice. And what I always take from all of our conversations and time that we spent together is um, how invested you are in building relationships. Like, you have spent the time with me and the rest of the staff here just so that we understand how much time and effort and hard work and challenging conversations went in to create this organization, and how it, 2 decades later, you're still showing up to be there and help, anytime you can. You're always raising your hand. So I thank you. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you, and grateful to call you my friend, Dr. Spadafino. But I
Likewise.
really enjoy.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for being our first guest. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
No, it's been my pleasure, and all I say is to all my friends in the field that I'm grateful for your friendship, I'm grateful for your support, and I'm grateful for your involvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.